In the wake of Hurricane Harvey, more than 80 people dead, 27 trillion gallons of water dumped on affected areas, millions still without power or clean drinking water. Countless numbers cannot yet return back to their homes more than 2 weeks now after the storm. Now fears of disease and illness are spreading through the Lone Star State. Joining me now to explain, Yvette Arellano. She's from grassroots advocate with TEJAS, that's Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. Yvette, thanks for being with us today. So you are out there in Houston, one of the hard-hit communities. Can you tell us what sort of cleanup efforts are currently underway?
Well, currently there are still 161 boil water notices, and about 40% of the water treatment facilities are still inoperable. We focus our work on the east side of Houston, that is home to the largest petrochemical complex in the entire nation. And within this area, there's absolutely no zoning. So there is no restrictions over constructing homes, schools, or hospitals right next to refineries, chemical plants, pipelines, and other industrial facilities. So the flood waters that affected these areas have a higher probability of carrying toxic substances along with the bacteria notices that have been going on in these areas. Those bacteria notices include cholera, E. coli, and typhoid. In one of the low-income housing projects over on the east side of Houston, Clayton Homes, in a single unit, there were about levels of E. coli were above 135, what the normal average is. So these waters are highly toxic, and there's very little communication going on between the local agencies, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which is the TCEQ, and the EPA. They're working in conjunction with each other in order to address the issues. But what we find is that they reach these areas which are low income, people of color communities that are low resourced at the very end. And so it is our organization, along with a coalition of 4 other communities, that are working here on the ground trying to get efforts, whether that's reentry kits for people who are once again reentering their homes, who are gutting their homes, because mold, it only takes 24 hours for mold to start forming inside of folks' homes. So they're coming back to toxic conditions, and yet the state and even the EPA are very slow to act.
I see. So it sounds like a lot of what you guys are doing as well are also informing the community so they're aware that these things are out there. And now there's also a greater pollution problem already existing in areas of places like Crosby, Texas. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. In Crosby, you had an organic peroxide plant that had 3 fires that weren't set by any local officials. The first 2 happened on Thursday night, early September, and the last one happened on Friday, somewhere around 5 p.m. An additional 6 fires were set by local officials along with Homeland Security and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. These were supposed to be sustained fires, but what ended up happening was that you had only 1.5 miles of an evacuation zone, and a much larger portion of up to 7 miles was actually exposed to anything that was burned off. Up to date, our conversations with the EPA have only let us know that so far they believe that the plume was non-toxic.
Wow. So they believe.
Now, these also run efforts that are right. And so these also run efforts that our organization has, again, with a coalition of other organizations that have filed lawsuit against the EPA for not enacting the chemical disaster rule, that is the RMP rule, which would allow community members and community organizations to have full access to the volume of substances being held at chemical facilities, the types of substances, and to form evacuation plans along with plant officials in order to have updated notices. Now, under this administration, the Trump administration, there was originally a
day delay that then turned into a 9 delay. At this point, we are at a 20-month delay. Under this administration, there has been a delay on actually enforcing those safety mechanisms that are supposed to go into effect and protect our communities, the frontline communities that sit right next to these refineries and chemical plants. And the actual piece of legislation right now currently sitting in the U.S. Court of Appeals, the courts themselves has found this situation such a disastrous event that they've expedited their rulings for hopefully early summer.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your eyewitness accounts of all this. You're there on the ground. Yvette Arellano, grassroots advocate with Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. Thank you so much for sharing with us.